Hello, everyone. Madayaw and Shalom. Let's talk about judges. Oink, 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 oink. Oink, 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 oink. All right, so after Joshua passed on, everyone was kind of left to their own devices, as in, they did whatever they wanted. It was a little bit chaotic. So now we come into the period of the judges, which actually lasted about more or less 350 years. So here's what happens there's like a cycle happening. God raises up a deliverer, Israel's delivered. When they're in peace, suddenly somebody does something. Well, okay, not just somebody, a lot of them do something. The nation goes into disobedience. And to punish them, God sends an oppressor. And then, of course, they cry out. And because God loves the Israelites, He will send another deliverer. And then the cycle goes on, which you will see here. Okay, let's start. Othniel is actually, I think he's like a relative of Caleb. I'm not sure if he's like a son-in-law or something like that. He actually ruled for 40 years, which was actually very, very long. Now, interesting is Ehud. Ehud is very longest lived of the judges. Nobody was there nobody expected Ehud because Ehud wasn't the type to look, I suppose he did not look like a warrior because most of the judges are actually warriors at the same time, judges, leaders. So people go to them like Joshua, like Moses. Okay, they expected the judges to be somewhat like Moses and Joshua rolled into one. Okay, so Ehud wasn't the type. Most of these guys don't look like the type. Okay, some of them do, but Ehud did not look like the strong man that you would expect, like Joshua. But he was able to kill King Eglon of Moab. He infiltrated Eglon's castle, he killed Eglon and was victorious, and he ruled for 80 years. Then Shamgar killed 600 of the Philistines with just a poking device, maybe a poker, something that they use for the animals. Anyways, nobody knew how how long. So he's actually very short, he had a short story. Deborah is interesting because so we will assume that this guy's 20 years from here to here. So after 20 years of being oppressed by Jabin, King Jabin of Canaan, Deborah rose up and called Barak. Barak is one of the leaders who became like a general. But Barak's like, I'm not gonna march into battle unless you're with me. And Deborah said, okay, but God said, the victory will not be yours. So this is actually wrong. Barak was not victorious. It was not Barak who saved the nation. It was Jael, and Jael is a woman. Jael killed the general who was there. Anyway, so she ruled for 40 years. Deborah, by the way, is the only female judge. And then you have Gideon. Gideon was actually, I think he's the youngest child, and he's not even he's not a warrior. He's a farmer, and he didn't want to get involved in anything. But God, He calls you, and when He calls you, you have no choice. And with only 300 men, so this guy was like the inspiration for 300. So with 300 men, he was able to defeat the army of the Midianites. So he ruled for another 40 years. Then you have Tola. I don't know much about Tola, but he's from Issachar. Although it says here he lived in Ephraim. So he lived for 23 years. Jair. So he had 30 sons who rode in 30 donkeys, and they had 30 towns. So he only lived, 22 years. Jephthah though, Jephthah's story is a little tragic. So after 18 years of Ammonite oppression, Jephthah rose up and delivered Israel. However, he was making a vow to the Lord and said, Lord, I'll offer to you anything, or the first thing that I get home to. The first thing law of surprise, whatever, the first thing I encounter, I will sacrifice to you. Unfortunately for him, when he came home, the first thing that greeted him was his daughter. So he actually sacrificed his daughter. Now, God does not approve of human sacrifice. It's just that Jephthah was stupid and he did not know how to offer properly. He offered his daughter like like killed her enough and put her in a pyre, which, by the way, is a no. He should have, like Samuel. You offer your child by giving them to the temple and they become servants of the temple. But he didn't do that. He killed his child and offered it to God. Anyways, there's Ibzan, Elon, Abdon. Then the final judge is Samson. Okay, so Samson was actually the only person from Dan here. Okay, so all of them were actually from different tribes. But here's what you have to understand about Samson. He was the one who fought with the Philistines the longest, or at least the hardest, and he killed the most Philistines. So he killed 1,000 Philistines with just a jawbone, but when he destroyed the Philistine temple, it says here that whatever he killed in his lifetime, when he was not in captivity, was 3 times more than whatever whatever he killed before. So he really killed a lot of Philistines. And I think he is the downfall of the Philistines. And that's the reason why we don't have any more Philistines after that. He killed all of them. So the Palestinians that you see today are not from the Philistines. The Palestinian that you see now are Arabs. Okay, so let that be clear. The Philistines have all died out. Now, let's talk about the Nazirite vow. There are, 3 people who were Nazirites in the Bible. And one of them is Samson and the other one is not Jesus. Okay, so a Nazirite vow is somebody who's supposed to dedicate yourself in the temple, and part of that vow was to not cut your hair at all. Okay, and you were supposed to live a humble life. Samson wasn't exactly doing that. Okay, so he was a Nazirite, such that he did not cut his hair at all since he was born. However, he loved women a lot. That was his weakness. He wasn't supposed to touch women. He wasn't even supposed to touch alcohol. But, this guy, he loved life. But, yeah. Anyways, one other person who's noteworthy of a Nazirite is John the Baptist. He is a Nazirite. Now, when you are a Nazirite, you are not supposed to touch razor to your hair, whether it's beard or the head. So, when people are depicting John the Baptist, he should have long hair, like Samson had long hair. In fact, John only wore like camel hair and bark. He only ate locust and honey. Well, Samson, he ate everything from donkey to like bear to lion, and yeah. Anyway, so the true Nazirite is really John the Baptist. Jesus is a Nazarene, not a Nazirite. So I hope that clears things up, and I hope you guys like. Maybe I will do more of deep dive, because the story of the judges is actually very interesting. I know some of them don't have much details on them, but we'll have to try to read between the lines, and hopefully we're not making things up. Isn't that right, my baby Bambi? Anyways, he likes to listen to Bible stories, and I'm very glad that he is. There he is. What do you want? You want? All right. Madaya, everybody, and good night.